And hello and welcome, my name is Martin, and in this tutorial what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at how to use the foliage tool. In the last tutorial what we did was we actually built in all of the different static meshes that we were going to use, and in so doing so created all the different variety that we were going to need to be able to put this out on the field. So let's go ahead and real quick see what we can do with this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually leave all of these active, and I'm going to hit once in the center. Oh, I have to not be on erase. Let's go back to paint and let's click once. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to see what kind of terrain I got. Let me go ahead and push play and let's go back in that direction. Okay, so the first thing that we see obviously is that we have things that are covered in snow on top of things that are not snow. Now in some situations this might be okay. Maybe if we, I don't know, if it was a strange world, but mostly this is not correct. It doesn't look real. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to selectively delete things. So the first thing I want to do is uncheck everything that I do not want to delete. Okay, so we've left only the things that are winter. And let me zoom out a bit. And this time we're going to hit the remove, or I'm sorry, the erase. And I'm just going to go over that area. And now if we go in, we see that we have none of those things available. All right. Next thing we should look at is we should come over here to add foliage types and actually see how many of each one of these things we're getting. So we're getting a lot of this type of grass, and that seems to be the thing that's the most. So let's click onto that one and figure out why that one is giving us so many instances of, and if that is doing something beneficial for us. So the first thing I want to do is I want to see which one of these that is. So I'm going to go back into my erase tool, and it's really big right now, so I'm going to go down to dense to size, and I'm going to make it, a fairly small brush. Then I'm going to come here, and that's the one I have selected, so I'm going to delete. So what we're looking at is all these little green things, these little green circle patches. So for me, yeah, I mean, it looks okay. Could they be a little bit bigger? Maybe. Could they take up a little bit more space for all the weight that they have? Possibly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come back down here, and you see that the density is 20 by 100, and I think that's the one that I left the most of. We left scaling at 9 to 1.1. So what I'm going to actually do is let's make this 2 to 3. Okay, I'm going to switch back over to paint. I'm still on the small paintbrush. I'm going to push in, and I'm getting a little bit bigger, but that's starting to look weird. It's we've stretched it, or we've made it so big that we're starting to see some other types of things. Now the only thing we might do here is maybe do a build and see if that helps with some of the materials, but at this point I think we're losing the effect of it, and it's starting to no longer look real to us. So let's hit the erase. Now, if that's a stylistic thing, and you want to stylistically do that, that's fine. So now another thing to look at is let's see what else we could do with this. Let's do something different. Instead of creating like a lot of trees, let's create something that looks less like a forest and more like a grassland. So I'm actually going to select that, hit erase, and actually I'm going to go through and turn these all back on because I'm going to erase all of them. off. And now we can just go through and erase all of that. All right. Now, I'm not super happy with the grasses that I have, and it looks like I actually still have a few of them left out there. If we make this really big, there we go. Now everything's gone. Okay, so let's go back to paint. So I don't really like the grasses that I got. If I don't like something, what I can do is I can right click on it. I can say remove. So that's something that we didn't look at. We can also say replace with. So you can leave this item here, and if you had some out on the floor, for example, let's paint a few, well, not everything. Excuse me. Let me just leave the grasses up. Okay, we're still on erase. We have to go to paint. Okay, so those are the grasses that it made. Not super happy with that. I can select this, right click on it. You can deactivate them so that they're not there. You can remove them entirely. You can replace them with something else, which is what we're going to do. So let's go in here and let's type in grass, and let's see if... Okay, now you're going to have to give it a second so it can replace those. You can see that it's already started to change them. We'll have to wait for the shaders. And I'm not so sure I like these. Can already see they're kind of small. Wow, those things are tiny. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try replace with... I think I may have actually just deleted that. Yep, let's just go and grab another one. Okay, so I'm going to go in foliage type. Let's type in grass again. And again, I don't like doing it up there. That's why I like coming down here to actually look for it. So let's go back to content. Let's look for another grass. Let's keep these as static meshes. And let me see if I can't find something that looks a little bit more like what I want. Let's try this one. Okay, so it comes in active. We've already got this on paint. Okay, now all I'm doing is waiting for my shaders. But that already looks a lot better. I can already see something that looks more like patchy grass. Now this one is an interesting one. As you come in, the grass fills in. As you're further away, you don't see it. So what it's doing, I think, is it's actually generating that grass as you get closer to it or go away from it. So then that way it's not always active, which is kind of a cool thing. That's why it looks like it disappears until you get close to it. Again, not super thrilled with that one. It's not the effect that I'm looking for. So let me hit remove. Do I want to remove all of these? Yes. So we now saw how to remove it from there. So let's try a different type of grass. Let's try this one. Wow, I think that came in super thick. There is over 1,500 pieces of grass that just came in. Gonna wait for those shaders. Wow, that is some good looking grass right there. Okay. It's kind of expensive. I mean, it's really, really thick. Let's go back into its settings and let's see if we can change some of that up. So density came in at 100. Let's make this 50. Let's put it at a radius of, I don't know, at least 20. To give it some variance. All right. So now we'll go in and we'll hit the remove. Oh, we're doing paint. Erase. Okay, we'll go back in and paint. So that's a little bit less. Let's look and see how many that actually gave us. So that's good. It gave us about half as much as what I would expect. Okay, so about 507 of them. That looks a little bit patchier. Still kind of big. Let's just walk through it and see what this actually feels and looks like. Okay, kind of cool. Still probably doesn't need to be that thick. You'll probably thin that up a little bit. All right. So once we've got, and you can do thicker areas and thinner areas. Like right now, this is a thicker area. I can go back into the tool, go back in here, switch this down lower. So then that way, instead of having so many of these, it maybe does a whole lot less, like let's say about 10. And let's increase the distance to about 50. Once we've got that on the tool, we'll hit paint and we'll do just a couple of them. And now I'm clicking and dragging and more or less painting, whereas before it was like, just boom, and all of them just showed up at the same time, right? So let's erase this area and let's go back to paint. There we go. And at this point, with the density that I have right now, we've got about 900, and we've been able to fill in a much, much larger area without them being so clustered and clumped together. Now, another thing that could happen is that you may be wondering how much stress this is putting on your computer. A way to check for that would be to do the hit Control Alt Delete and go into your task manager. So this should look like this. Go into your task manager, and what your task manager will show you is how much of your computer's power you're using to be able to generate and play around with what you've got going on right now. So as it is, my game is taking up about 8%, anywhere from 5 to 6% of the power that my computer is using. Now there is also other stuff that's running in the background, like the OS and things like that are there. We can also look and see how much memory we're using, which is kind of cool. And the graphics card. So in this computer I have the internal graphics card and the additional graphics card, and we can see that the internal one is doing about 10%. That's the one running the screen, and the additional one, the one that's got that extra 8 gigs of RAM, is doing less than 2%. So if we go back in, let's see if we can look at these two stats at the same time. So I'm going to push play. So as I'm moving around on the screen, you can see now that the computer is using really not a whole lot more RAM. The graphics cards are picking up a bit more, especially as I make like sharp turns. You can see it's gone from like 1% to like 16-18%. The computer's memory is about the same, and the CPU has gone up about 10 percentage points to be able to play the level. That's not really doing much as far as adding anything to power. All right, so like I said, being able to mess around with the foliage tool and adding a bunch of additional static meshes will sort of give you the idea of where your computer is and what kind of tolerances and how much stuff you can actually add to it by looking over here and pulling up your task manager and going from process to performance. It's a neat little trick just to see what you're doing. All right. So we've seen how we can do a grassland and and a forest. We've seen how to add and subtract different pieces of foliage together or separately so that we can remove one or replace one or delete one entirely. Now what I want to do is I want to move over here to the back side where I've got this sort of area that has like snow and things like that, right? So this is more of the snow area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the same thing as we did on the other side, but I'm going to select only the plants that are meant for snow, or the snow plants. So this is sort of nice with the paintbrush that again you can select only things that are meant to be in this particular area and not ones that are not. So you don't have to create another paintbrush. You just load this in with all the ones that you need and just selects the ones that you want when you're using. So again, we have this on paint. So I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to paint this area. So if we go and we look in, we see, oh man, all our trees are really drunk, like really drunk. There's probably not a straight tree in the bunch, and a lot of that is because the trees themselves are on planes, not on planes, on surfaces that have moved, right? And the effect of this, what this feels like, is that there was some type of an avalanche or something, or the earth moved and pushed the trees. That would be the only reason why the trees, instead of going straight up, like look at this guy, like growing straight out of the side of the mountain, right? So maybe I like that tree being there, I just don't want it to look weird like that. Now, because we're using the foliage tool, what we'll have to do is go in and select, and then we can select an individual tree, and using the same spacebar tool, the select tool, what we'll do is we will angle this tree in such a manner that it looks more or less like it was straight, right? That it doesn't look like it got knocked over by an avalanche or anything like that. Okay, so here's another one. We'll select this one. Now I can also probably turn this off from being 10 degrees per rotation to 5, so it's not quite as drastic when I move it. That actually turned out pretty good. Let's look at this one. Okay, I can do the same thing with the rocks. That rock looks kind of weird just sitting there on the mountain like that. See if we can maybe turn it a little bit. Okay, definitely looks weird if the bottom of it is showing. Maybe I don't like that one at all. Maybe what I want to do with that one is just erase it. So I can, whoops. Let's do undo there. So I can have the select button. I can select this one, and I should be able to individually delete. So if maybe there's an area that like right here, those look kind of weird, I'll just select that one, hit delete from my keyboard, delete from my keyboard. And I can now go through and I can clean this up so that it doesn't look like I have too many of one particular thing. And maybe I want to clear out this area that's more, hilly. So we can create a space there that doesn't have so many of these rocks with snow on it. Okay, so on this side, what you saw was the ability for us to be able to select just certain objects, draw those out, look at the objects, decide that we don't necessarily like the way they're showing up because maybe from the player's point of view it might look weird, like from right there. So we can either select an object and hit delete on our keyboard, or select the individual object and using our X, Y, and Z tool make that object more or less look like it should if it was, so you don't get a bunch of drunk trees. Okay, so that's the second part of using the foliage tool. At this point, Most everything has been covered. All the important stuff for us to be able to create our own landscapes, be able to draw those landscapes, use the foliage tool to be able to populate that landscape with different types of plants or rocks or static meshes. Really, I mean, if I wanted a field of chairs, it would have been a field of chairs. It doesn't matter to the foliage tool. What does matter to the foliage tool is that it's a static mesh, and that's what you're putting in there, and whatever settings you set up for it as far as where they're going to be. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.